What's going on, 80K Sports Performance families? Ryan here with this week's Coach's Corner. And this week I want to talk about what is for dinner in your house. And in previous weeks we've talked about what's for breakfast, what's for lunch. This week I wanted to talk about what's for dinner. And there's a few reasons why I want to talk about that. One, this is a frequent conversation we have with our athletes during training, with most of our training during the year being done in the afternoon and early evening. So it's a good topic because most athletes are going to be going home and shortly after training eating dinner. So it's a good way to get a lens into what their nutrition looks like in terms of their post-workout recovery. And it's a great way to start the conversation about nutrition. And some athletes hit the nail on the head. They do a great job having a good, well-balanced meal with a lot of protein to recover from their workouts, carbs to restore their energy, and some healthy fats. They're staying hydrated at their dinner. And others, they're missing the mark. We have some athletes that when you ask what's for dinner, they're having pasta with butter, which pasta, great source of carbohydrates. However, we're missing out on that protein aspect, and that's going to really hinder their recovery. And if you're an athlete trying to gain weight, having enough protein and having enough calories in total is going to be super important. Another thing we find with some of our athletes that are kind of missing the mark is they're relying on dinner to cover most of their calories for the day. Because if we expand the conversation to, okay, well, what was for breakfast? What was for lunch? Because they're talking about this big dinner and they're saying that that's going to solve all of these problems. That can be a little bit tricky because it's really hard to put down half of your day's calories in one meal for a lot of athletes. So relying on that can be a little bit tricky in terms of setting themselves up for success, as well as it might just be too full and you might end up with a stomach ache. It might affect your sleep negatively, which is then ultimately going to negatively affect your recovery. So making sure that we're distributing our meals throughout the day and we're not relying on dinner to be that big savior in terms of our total caloric intake for the day can be a little bit tricky. So some tips to help you maximize your dinner. Make sure that we're checking the boxes, like we said, of having enough protein. So a good source of protein, good source of carbohydrates, veggies, healthy fats are going to make sure we get a nice rounded meal, as well as making sure that we have a hydration component to that, especially as we get into these warmer months. And preparing. Again, it's never worse than getting home after a long day of school, practice, games, workouts, and you don't have any food ready for you. So doing our best to prepare. Batching meals is super helpful. I'm a big fan of the crock pot, cooking a bunch of meals and then having those ready to go throughout the week. So that way I know when I get home, I'm able to have a nice meal ready for me. I'm going to have enough food. And again, also making sure during the day that I'm not relying on dinner to make a chunk of my day's calories happen. If you have questions on how you can maximize your athlete's performance by maximizing your dinner, feel free to reach out and I'm happy to talk about how we can help your athlete. We'll see you next week.